Alright, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be putting together a graduation sublimation stole. So I've already made the designs. I designed it myself in Canva, and I'm sitting here touching it, but you have to really be careful about things. Some things were cut off, some things were not inverted, and to me it wasn't into center. So my design, as I was checking it out, I wasn't sure if it was going to work, so I'm definitely going to revamp the design, and as I think about it, we're going to let you watch. When you're doing these, I had to make about 6 pieces. First I measured them in Canva, then I dropped the designs into Canva, and I'll do another video showing how I did it and how I designed it. Not really sure how it's going to turn out, but hey, come on with me on this journey. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on all post notifications. All right, now I'm using this paper cutter instead of my other cutter, my crafting cutter. It seemed to have a better straight edge to it. I suggested that the printer print edges to it so I could use as a guide to match up my design. And it just didn't seem like it was going to work out right. And next I used the tape that I got off Amazon. Now, I don't suggest you use this tape. This is some yellow tape because I ended up with some yellow marks. Here's where I have changed the design, but the design that I changed it to is on the edge, and it just seemed that I was going to try and match it up, and I'm still going to use the paper cutter to cut it and see how that pans out. Once I line it up, I'm just going to put it and place it on the stole. And tape them together, but before I do that, I'm going to cut them so that I can tape them and put them together. During this process of the taping is when I realized that my design just didn't flow as what I wanted it to flow as. I wanted green on the bottom, or orange on the bottom, and green on the top, and things just didn't seem to go as well. And when I looked at my blank piece that I had, it just didn't go with it. It was like orange green, and that is not what I was looking for. I also noticed that my design once again is on the side. Having a design on the side does not allow me to line it up in the center and get that full sublimation look. So that is where we are with that. And I'm gonna try my best not to have any lines. Using the size of the paper that I use, it does not fit my printer, so it does give me a mismatch error. Those EcoTank printers are small printers, and they're not really designed for large custom items, so I had to learn to work with that as well as using the yellow tape. I say the yellow tape again because the yellow tape is definitely going to end up leaving some things, and you shall see. Here's at the point. Remember, I used 6 pieces of this 11 by 17 paper, and I wanted the design to be actually the bottom. That is the bottom of one of the sides, and then each side has 3 pieces, so that totals up to be 6 pieces. The only thing is that the design is not completely in the center, and trying to line up the design is definitely a hard task. I realized I was going to have to reprint and restart all over again. Here's where I realized I cut them a little too small. I cut off all of the edges instead of like a piece of the edge. I also really realized that that design was not going to match. So I went ahead and tried to match it up underneath each other and tape it together and see what was going to happen. So that is the side. That is a lot of paper right there that I got to cut off. But I don't want to cut it uneven because I only want the word graduate on there. So at this point, I noticed that if I measured them up, I thought that I could just cut the ends of the paper because I was getting some excess ink on the stole, on the back of the stole, and all that good stuff. And I figured that if I took that off, then I would be able to get rid of that excess ink that was sublimating in the middle of the stole. So I gave it a try. Now I'm gonna match up the lines and try and even them out. But as I'm doing that, I realized that just wasn't gonna work. You see, it is very uneven. It's just not conducive with the rest of the design. And one thing I can say is that you need to make sure that your design is going to actually match up or be able in place. So I tried to alleviate them lines that I was getting, as well as the smudges and all of the other things that I was getting on the design when I printed it the first time. And I'm not sure how, but I did tape the paper on the back of one sheet and then put the other one. My problem ended up being the tape. Wrong tape, wrong color. Tape came out yellow. The tape just wasn't going to be it for me. So I ended up researching and finding out that I needed to use some sort of clear or blue tape. So watch your products that you use as you create your designs. Patience is a virtue. I don't want any white lines to show. Here you notice the end tip. You have to be really careful to make sure all of that tip is colored so it doesn't come out white as well. I ran one and I got a white tip at the bottom. So just be careful of that and pull it up. The material is very flimsy, so I suggest a test material before you actually press your actual material, because with a test material, I don't care, all the pushing down in the world did not help me with trying to get this material to lay flat. So some sort of 100% polyester little test material might be a good idea before you press anything on your actual design. Too much, because that's gonna, I noticed that takes away, that's gonna give me a seam. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of tape. I'm not gonna use too much tape. Just enough there. Now this time my mind told me to use a little bit of tape. No, don't use a little bit of tape, because what happens with the machine, it creates moisture, and moisture gets under there if you press it too hard or too long. And I definitely pressed it too hard and too long. And when I got done with all of this tape, I had a runoff, not even on the back, but also in the middle of the tape. It seemed to get moisture underneath it. So I learned a great lesson doing this. So I got all that covered up. I'm just going to gently put it on here. I don't think it's going to fall off because I got some butcher paper. So I did use the butcher paper as my guide. Remember to have one piece of butcher paper on the bottom and one piece of butcher paper on the top when you're pressing it, getting ready to press it. And that's what I was using as my guide, and continue to press this yellow tape all over it. So as you see, that design is very, very, very uneven. And let's see what happens. And not on the side. Just because I put it on the side don't mean it need to be down the side. And I can kind of peek under here and make sure everything over here has got some sort of color to it. I may adjust it just a little bit, because I don't want any of it not to have any color. And that's what happened to me last time. Now I like the way that's covering her down there. And got all her knees in there. Alright, we don't want to miss any of the girl. And I got the part that says graduate. Okay. Now, get some of that air out of there. This was, I mean, for me to start sublimating, I sure chose probably a hard task to do. It seems simple, but because of the material, I learned quickly that it was not the one. It moves, and I don't want it to move. So to keep it from moving, I'm going to tape it just a little bit. So I continue to try to place the fabric down as flat as possible, even after ironing the fabric and piecing it together. So this is what I ended up with. I tried to cover the entire thing, even the V at the top, and put it under my heat press and see how I could make it work. And before I put it under my heat press, make sure you press out the the stole itself and get the wrinkles out, because that had a lot to do with some of my problems as well. Now, if you can see, one side is cut different than the other side. You see that paper hanging off on the other end. You also see those bulks under there. So basically, you can see where I may run into a problem. It's not straight. It's not flat. The tape kind of bulked it up, and that didn't help my purpose of pressing. I have researched tons and tons and tons of things, but they don't tell you when you're covering it. They do tell you about that little tip up there at the edge, and not to do that right there. What I'm getting ready to do, I'm getting ready to place this on the other side. They don't tell you that ink is going to run. All I can say is use a bigger table when you're trying to do this. I try to use a small table that I usually design things on or do nails on. Use a large size table if you want it to fold out and be able to see the design. So that should help with what you're working with. Here's where I pre-pressed the design, the stole, to make sure that it was going to be flat and straight. We had to start all over. So we're going to pre-press this design, this stole, and we're going to see exactly if we can get the right design to work for it and get it taped the way we wanted to tape it and get everything flowing. Here's our final product. We did get the design down the center. She did enjoy each one. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you learned something from my mistakes, and remember to choose your products wisely. If you haven't watched my last video, make sure you check out my last video. After all, this was my first sublimation stole. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching. Bye now.